a very, very special event where we are going to see the book launch of Neha's Chasing Butterflies at Moonrise. And I would like to introduce her as a poet, as a warrior poet. And when I first heard the phrase warrior poet, I was very intrigued. Usually a poet is, generally considered not a warrior, right? A warrior is somebody out there with a spear, or something like that. And here we are, a warrior poet. So it's interesting, and we shall discover as we go through the evening today as to why Neha is a warrior poet. But let me give you a little introduction of her, the other side of her, the non-poetic side of her. She works as a senior marketing executive. She runs a marketing and personal brand strategy consulting practice. She works with LinkedIn as official content creator and DEI champion. And she's a published author, poet. She has previously written for the Harvard Business Review, and her article on time boxing has a productivity management tool, features consistently on HBR's top list of must-reads. I have to read it though.
You have time box time for
time box. So apart from that, I also found out she's a black belt, right? Yes. So very, very interesting things we shall discover. And this multi-hyphenate is uniquely successful in her abilities to infuse warmth and inclusivity in corporate spaces. That's the corporate side of her. But today we are going to look at the poetic side of her. So I would just request Neha to say a few words before I continue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alokparna, for being here and for graciously moderating our fireside chat today. And really, thank you to everyone who made time on a Saturday evening to be with me at the launch of my baby, of Chasing Butterflies at Moonrise, my first book. Like Alokparna mentioned, writing has been my main form of expression. It's the essential leitmotif that ties together and weaves together all the different facets of my life. And writing is the way I kind of understand and interact and interpret the world. And I'm so excited to dive in and talk about all things writing and poetry. And just thank you everyone from the bottom of my heart for being here today.
So before we start, we would like to invite Sunita Kriplani, right, as a gesture of inauguration or starting. I mean, it's a new start, so something auspicious. So nothing as wonderful or as special as the mom. Basically, if more, for
it's indeed a very proud moment for me to launch Neha's book. As I always tell everybody, this is Neha's first baby, my first grandchild.
Oh, congratulations!
I'd like to thank each one of you for taking your precious time and coming here today. I know everybody has various plans for their weekend, and despite all that and braving the traffic in Bangalore, and I hope you guys got a nice parking spot. That's why I asked everybody, please come early so that you get an ample parking space. So thank you everybody from the bottom of my heart. It's indeed a very special day. And I'm grateful to all of you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Neha, my question to it is, why poetry? What makes you and what has made you write poetry so far? I'm sure, like, we heard this whole corporate side of you, this marketing side of you. So what made you, turn into a poet? And if you could just, tell us a little about your journey as a poet.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, there's a quote in the preface of my book which really sums up my, my philosophy when it comes to poetry. It's by the spiritual mystic teacher Jalaluddin Muhammad Rumi, and I'd just like to read it out. In your light, I learn how to love. In your beauty, how to make poems. You dance inside my chest where no one sees you, but sometimes I do. And that sight becomes this art. And I think that really encapsulates how I view poetry. It's this, it's the act of sort of bearing witness to the divine and the beautiful in our lives, and that to me really sums up poetry. And it's about writing from a space of honesty and integrity, and hopefully the reader will, resonate with that.
Absolutely. I mean, I really like this point about the divine and, being honest and the integrity part of it. I think all of that, if it's there, the words probably just flow. So, how you're a marketing professional, so how do you how did you manage to balance, or how did you manage to move from one space to the other seamlessly?
So, like I said, writing is just the main form of my expression, and and marketing is sort of an extension of that. If you think about how you put yourself in the mindset of the audience, and you think about their needs and motivations, and that as a marketer is a very important skill to have, whereas as a writer you pretty much do the same thing, right? You think about the person's state of mind, and you craft a story or a narrative or poetry that really resonates with them. So I think these are complementing forces and complementing stories to tell. And
but I think that's a very I would say that's a very nice way of looking at what we look at. When we think of marketing, we don't think of all that, but you've actually drawn out something very sweet and special from marketing, because we tend to think of marketing as very corporate.
Often I feel like marketing gets a bad rap
Yes.
unnecessarily because it's but at the core of it, it's really understanding the needs of people and then crafting narratives that meet those needs and help them achieve the goals that they want to achieve through the products or services that we're trying to
Market.
and market to them. Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. So how did you start poetry? Like, how did you start writing? And
So I actually started, I've been writing all my life pretty much, and it was only during the pandemic that I started, I started scribbling furiously. I felt like the words were just bubbling up from within this typewriter, within my soul, and like the poems were just flowing through my fingers like ink, and I felt like there was enough. After a point, of course, I felt that there was enough material to create into a book, and then the journey began to give the book its shape and to put it together in a narrative flow that made sense to the reader, So if you look at my book, it's actually divided into 5 chapters, and those 5 chapters correspond to 5 different themes, and it kind of takes the reader on a journey. So I always say it's a novel told in the form of poetry,
Beautiful.
So the idea is that it kind of encapsulates the entirety of a human life, whether that's love and longing and heartbreak and acceptance and self growth and discovery. So it's the gamut of emotions, really.
Wow, that's something, like the entire thing. So all of these poems that you've written that are in the book, they're about 52
poems,
right? So all of those, have they come out during the lockdown, or were you writing them earlier, but you just said?
Yeah, so I've been writing all my life, but majority of these poems started to take shape during the lockdown.
Wow, so
Yeah.
the lockdown has been positive in many ways.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So are you going to be reading a poem to us? Would you like to read a poem to us
Yeah.
about the very act of writing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first poem that I'll read out today is essentially, like you said, it's about the act of writing, and it's called Raindrops on a Windowsill. First came torrential love, then came soul-wrenching pain, then came the words, quiet and unbidden, like the falling rain. All I could really do was sit by and watch as they took form. My job was simply to type them up, to write them down, and try to make sense of it all.
Wow, I think that's like really, see, this one also reminds me of another poem that you have. I don't want to give too much away, but there's this really nice poem about love and how it makes sense to a writer. Whether love happens or not, the writer is able to, get something out of that. So it's very interesting. Like, I was going through the poems. So there are poems on how writing happens, so, or what writing does to you. So I think that's a really, very, very, what do you say, you know, it's a very meta kind of a thinking into, you know, writing, rather than not only are you writing, but you're looking at yourself as a writer. So, so what made you publish? I know you came up with the poems, you know, you had the entire collection, but what made you want to publish the book?
Yeah, so I think for a writer, you know, the ultimate goal in many ways is to publish, and we always tend to have that, you know, that benchmark that only when you're published are you considered a real writer.
True,
know,
sadly true.
It's sadly true, you know, that's how it is. But I like to flip the narrative a little bit, you know. I like to say that if you write, you're a writer, you know. Whether you write for yourself and it's just in your journal or your diary, or, you know, you write for public consumption, or you even do it for work, you know. If you're a marketer and you're a writer and a copywriter in an ad agency, you're still a writer.
Right. True,
right?
very true.
And I think the essence of writing is just to come to the page with a sense of honesty and integrity, and I think that shines through for the reader, you know, when they can see that honesty on the page and that lived experience. I think that's what makes writing good.
True. And so what was your experience getting your book published?
Yeah, actually for me, publishing was fairly straightforward, you know. I had a couple of conversations with two or three different publishers, and I finally zeroed in on this one because I felt like they understood my vision and they could do justice to my book. So for me, luckily, you know, the process was very straightforward. I know people have had horror stories when they think about publishing their book, but I'm just so glad that, you know, I had a straightforward journey, and this book was, you know, within a couple of months everything was signed, sealed, and went into production.
Actually, that goes to say what the quality was probably, because a lot of times people, especially poets, face a lot of rejections. Because publishers are not able to, publishers don't think poetry sells, right? So that's one of the saddest thing, to find publishers who are actually sensitive enough to, you know, kind of take that chance. I think that's a great thing that you found one.
Yeah, very grateful.
Yeah. So, and what made you select this title, Chasing Butterflies at Moonrise? I thought it was a very pretty title.
Thank you. And pretty artwork as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's really very nice. I mean, there's moonrise and there's butterflies. So what made you think of that?
So, I mean, a lot of people may not know this, but I used to write a blog called Chasing Butterflies way back when. And I think that imagery stuck with me, you know, because there's a sense of whimsy associated with chasing butterflies. And at moonrise, which is my favorite time of day when the sun is set and, you know, it's time to it's easing into the evening, and I quite like that time of day and night. And so I think it was just it was an amalgamation of these two factors really that brought together the title of the book.
So do you actually chase butterflies?
in as many words, in as many ways.
Very nice, very nice. So, well, it is. I mean, and what I also liked about the title was it's about hope, right? It's about something pretty, something good, something, you know, as you said, whimsical. Yeah. And now that you are a published poet, how do you feel?
Ecstatic. Honestly, it's like I've just given birth, like my mom said. You know, this is her first grandchild and my first baby. Honestly, like the last push is the hardest. Just getting it over the line, I think was the hardest thing. But once it's out, and you know, once it's been accepted and loved by people, I think there's a sense of relief. There's a sense of joy. There's a sense of pride. And I'm just so grateful, you know, because a lot of people have been telling me that they see their stories reflected in these poems, you know. So wherever they are, I really believe that wherever you are, you might find something that resonates with you, you know, whether you're in a stable long-term relationship, or you're looking for love and seeking it, or you're just on a journey of self-discovery and self-acceptance. I think there's a little something in it for everyone, you know.
True. It resonates. Like I read through them and I could, you know, like I could understand or I could relate to most of them, especially the ones on love or on hope, and like you've really touched it to the core. Why don't you read something out from your book now?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I would be very happy to. So the second poem I'll read tonight is called The Oasis. The traveler had been scouring the desert in a mad, frenzied search for water. Days and weeks had gone by with nothing to quench their thirst. Then, as night fell, just as suddenly the clouds parted and the moonlight shone on an oasis. Is this a mirage? They wondered. Anxious yet eager, they crawled on their hands and knees towards the shimmering light of promised salvation. And when they got there, their eyes couldn't believe the sight they witnessed. A golden lagoon filled with liquid light, date palms, fragrant flowers, a veritable paradise. And best still, water enough to last 7 lifetimes. The moon, a cold compress on a fevered night. The stars, distant yet near, casting their pale light. The waves unfurling underfoot like bales of undulating silk. This is what it feels like to have found you and made you mine.
Beautiful. Undulating silk. Very pretty. So Neha, as we just heard one poem by her, it has a lot of nuances, a certain softness, As I was reading through the various poems, I was really touched by the different feelings that they bring about. There's softness, there's edge, there's pain, there's hope, well, you're chasing butterflies, so there's always hope. Unless you want to chase them away.
Sweep them away.
No. No, yeah, I always think it's very pretty, dainty, chasing butterflies, yeah. So how do you traverse these varied emotions, and how do you put them so beautifully down in words?
Yeah, firstly, thank you for such kind words about, my writing and my poems.
No, I've enjoyed reading them, so.
Thank you. I'm so glad that, you said that there's hope and there's pain and there's longing, because those were the very emotions I was trying to convey through the poetry. And I really don't know, any writer will tell you they don't always know how they manage to convey these emotions or what exactly it is that makes our writing tick. I mean, you're a writer as well. You can agree with me there, I think. But I think, it's a question of showing up with a lot of honesty on the page.
True.
It's giving yourself that space and time to really crystallize those emotions and be able to try and convey them in the manner that you feel would resonate with people. And I think if you try to be disingenuous as a writer, that shows through as well.
Very true,
right?
very true.
The reader will know that this is not coming from a truthful place.
Yes.
It's kind of like when an actor doesn't fully believe in their lines.
Absolutely.
There's no conviction.
Absolutely.
Behind it. So the hope is that I've come to the page with a lot of honesty, and maybe that's what's come through.
This reminds me of something I've heard recently. I mean, I as an educator always say that you can only fake for like 10 minutes in a class, right? And as a writer, people have asked for outlines and this and that, and I was the one, I've always created, I've not really done outlines as much.
Yeah.
So recently I went to the Bangalore Literary Fest, and Abraham Verghese said the same thing. I was so happy, exactly what you said.
High praise.
Yes. He said that, people ask for outlines. I don't know what's going to be next. The pen rules, the characters rule, I write, and I really don't know where the writing will go once I start writing. And that's what you said, like it's that, it kind of flows, and if there's honesty, if there's integrity, it just flows through, and you can't fake that.
Yeah. And on the one hand, like, you can have just a sense of the direction you're headed in,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But you don't always know where the destination is.
yes.
And sometimes it evolves and changes when you write. And I think that's the journey itself, you know.
Absolutely.
It's a question of discovery and just you're learning about yourself in the process.
Absolutely. And Neha, don't you feel like when you're starting a poem, you really don't know how it'll end, right?
You
Like
really don't.
until the last line is written, and then you really don't know where it is going. Like you, as you said, you have a sense of direction, but you really don't know how. Like what are the words that will come pour out? So that's a very natural thing.
Absolutely.
So Neha, I'd request you to read one more poem of yours, but I want you to tell the story behind the poem. Like a lot of poems have different stories, right? So why do we write a certain poem? Just it's fun to know that, you know, that gives a different perspective on the poem itself.
Definitely. So the next one that I'll read is okay. Let me pick this one. I think it's a good one. This poem is called
This is a nice one. Yes.
The poem is called "This Is Not a Love Letter." This is not a love letter. I repeat, this is not a love letter. This is a letter to love, that devious miscreant, who for years has kept us ensnared, tormented and beguiled. It's charmed, seduced, and used every trick in the book to keep us hooked. That devil who has come and gone, moved on, while ensuring we couldn't. Dear love, this is the end of the road. Sincerely, the lovelorn. I think. Thank you. I think it's something that a lot of us will relate to, you know, feeling trapped and kind of bound by this little bit of a devilish creature, this Cupid-like figure who kind of toys with our emotions and plays with us a little bit. And my idea of writing this particular poem was to say, you know, like, we see what you're doing.
Yeah.
We see through your tricks, you know, like, enough. You know, we got it. You know, like, back off. That's what I wanted to convey through the.
Yeah, it's a very, I really like that humorous take on it, you know. It's like, don't, like, I know what you're doing out there. You know, some of your other very, like, some of the two poems that I really liked, and I'd encourage all of you to read them. They're very short and very, like, crypt poems. One is Lucky in Love, again about love, and When Will We Collide. So do, you know, when you're reading through, those two are my special favorites. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I love love as well. Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So thank you for that. You know, it's like it's a very cheeky kind of a thing. You're looking at love. So Neha, apart from writing poetry, what else are you good at? I mean, anything that the audience doesn't know. Now we know you are a marketing person, and we know you are a poet. So any other two things that people don't know?
I dream in French.
Wow.
That's something that I'm quite proud of on some level, like, because I was learning the language for the longest time and quite obsessed with French to a large extent, and everything Parisian and French, and, you know, just I feel like they also have that romantic softness kind of nailed. Yeah, Frenchmen. You know, and their style and their fashion and their food. So yeah, that's one thing, I guess. What about the other thing? I don't know.
A little about your street fighting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in the past I've you know, been a Krav Maga, and I almost reached a black belt level in karate.
Wow.
So I think that, you know, you were asking me earlier about like the warrior poet.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So that's the, you know, the tough side of me, or the, so I mean, the warrior poet was a name that someone like gave to me in passing many moons ago.
Wow.
And I think it kind of stuck because I love the imagery associated with it. You know, I love the strength and the toughness of being a warrior. And I think a lot of us, all of us are warriors. You know, we battle challenges in life on a day-to-day basis and we overcome them. So we are all warriors. And then when you think of a poet, you think of like the softer side of life, you know, like the grace and fluidity that's associated with poetry and music and art and culture and the softer things, you know. So I like those two opposing forces coming together and creating that juxtaposition, and I think to a large extent I do embody that, you know, that warrior poet side.
You know, it's interesting, like when you first mentioned the warrior poet, I thought of, you know, on one hand you have like a spear and the other you have a pen or a pencil.
Yeah.
I think that the two kind of, you know, that's why I think there's that edge in the poetry. There's also a sharpness along with the softness and a gentleness. So yeah, you were talking about being a warrior poet, so that leads actually to my next question, or rather my next request. Do you have a poem in your book that describes Neha the warrior poet?
Yeah, I think it'll have to be the poem called Chasing Butterflies, because it's linked very closely to the title of my book, and I kind of wanted to end on this note, you know, end the book on this note. I'll read the poem and then I'll talk a little bit about the poem or the character in the poem, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. So, Chasing Butterflies. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who on her daily walk stumbled upon a meadow. She was drawn to the rustling of the wind as it grazed the treetops. She took a tentative step, afraid that something would leap out at her from behind the trees. When she assured herself it was safe, she entered. It was only a few feet in before the grass tickled her bare knees, scraped and bruised as they were from the last time she'd fallen, which was mere days ago. Yes, she was quite accident-prone, it was true. But never mind that. Let us return to the little girl who is now looking up in wonder at the blue sky, watching the sun as it plays hide-and-seek through a blanket of snowy white clouds, shining brightly one moment, bathing the beautiful little girl in sun, and just as quickly dipping behind the clouds and casting long shadows across her hopeful face. She sits down, cross-legged, buried between the blades of grass. A book magically appears at her elbow. She picks it up, takes one quick look at it, and her heart leaps for joy. It is the book she has been waiting for. The book of love, some call it. It's leather-bound, heavy, and she finds that it has a faint, musty smell. It must be all those years of being locked up in a cold, dark bookcase that made it smell like this, she thinks to herself. Just as she begins to absorb herself amidst those honeydew words, a butterfly flits across her line of sight. In a flash, she's on her feet. The book lays forgotten on the ground as she tears after the butterfly, delight shining in her face and bathing her every feature like sweat. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the reason she'd entered the meadow on a whim, even though she didn't know it at the time. It's as if she had prearranged to meet this very butterfly in this very field at precisely this moment in time. She gives chase, eager to catch the butterfly. She wants to smell its colors and hear its fragrance. She wants to feel its soft wings as they beat gently in the palm of her hand. In short, she wants to love it and be loved by it. Ah, but butterflies, they don't wait for little girls now, do they? They flit in and out of sight like thoughts. They scramble, they hurry. Vamoose, they're gone before you know it. They're known for their flighty nature, for their inability to be captured and tamed. But see our little girl, she's just as quick. She runs like the wind, and she doesn't like to be outpaced. And ah, miracle of miracles, she's caught it now, holding it gently and firmly in an almost closed fist that she holds above her head, almost triumphantly. She has glee written all over her face. But as she loosens her grip, just a crack, to see how her new friend is faring, see, the butterfly now seizes its opportunity and flies out of her hand. She gives chase, but her heart just isn't in it this time. In a short while, she gives up, exhausted. She makes her way back to her spot and collapses into a dejected heap. She spends an hour laid out like this, her back on the ground, her face turned up towards the perfect blue skies. It seems almost cruel, like the heaven above is mocking her for failing. Even the sun seems harsher in all its midday glory. She screws up her face and closes her eyes, partly to defend against the sun, and also because she doesn't want to let escape that single lonely tear that's begun to form at the corner of her eye. Too late. The tear slides down anyway, lonely no more, for it is followed by another, and another, and another, until she's sobbing furiously at the injustice of it all. She really had wanted that butterfly, with all her heart. She'd yearned for it even before she knew what it was. And as she lay there, something wonderful happened. The rogue butterfly returned, unbidden, and landed softly on her upturned palm. It sat there tentatively, and then spoke so softly that she had to stop crying so she could listen to what it had to say. Politely, as though someone were knocking at an oak-panelled door in her grandfather's old study, it asked, "May I enter?" Love had arrived, and this time it intended to stay.
Wow, beautiful. I can see the little girl in the field. And what I really like is like the symbolism of the heavy book, right? And it's not that heavy book that stays, it's the light butterfly. And of course, the journey, the yearning, the crying, the finally getting it. But I really love the way, the imagery that it brings forth in the field, in the moonrise, like running after the butterfly. Very beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So there are more poems like this in the book. Of course, you might have guessed that, and very pretty ones. So that actually really describes you very beautifully as Neha, the warrior poet. So Neha, many people have many stories to tell, right? Everybody has a story to tell, but they don't know how to. So what would you, many poets want to have their writings, their poetry published, but they find the process daunting. So do you have any suggestions or any insights for them now that you have crossed that barrier?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think we're very fortunate and we're so lucky that we have so many platforms available to us and so many avenues today. Whether it's writing a blog online or, writing for Medium and Substack and all those platforms, or you can have your own website, you can have your own newsletter, you can self-publish. There's so many channels. You can write on social media, for example, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. So I think the barriers to entry are much lower, and there are much less gatekeeping than ever before. So I think it's a really good time and space to be a writer and
Yes.
to put your work out there, because there is an audience hungry for it as well.
True.
And people ask me this question, and I always say to them, especially like young writers and aspiring writers, I always say that if the desire to write is stronger than the inclination not to, then write. Give it your best, give it your all, and cliche as it sounds, but the world is your oyster.
True. No, this is a great time to be a writer because there are so many platforms, and people have also realized that they want to hear the stories, because there is a lot that everybody can relate to. So I think this is indeed a great time to be a writer.
100%.
So what next, Neha? Now that you are a published poet,
What next?
where do you want to go?
Yeah, hopefully many more books, and
Absolutely.
because I feel like I have many more stories inside me, and just waiting to come out, and hopefully that's the journey that my writing will take me on. Aside from that, obviously the work is relentless. There's tons to achieve professionally with my marketing practice and my personal brand strategy consultancy. So it's a very exciting time. I'm like super grateful, and I just feel so lucky to be able to do all these things and work with interesting people on interesting projects. It's absolutely fantastic.
Lovely, lovely. Good luck.
Hopefully a memoir at some point in my life, when I'm 100 years old and I'm writing my story.
Yeah. So, would you like to read another poem for the audience, or should we have them ask questions first?
Whichever way. If there are any questions.
Poem. I think there's a
Poem?
request. Yeah, poem
Okay,
first, and then we'll have the.
Okay, poem first. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Stardust memories. We're made of stardust, you and I. Years and years ago, when a star expanded, streaking across the night sky, there was you, there was me, bound together, breathing the same molten heat, so tightly wound that no one could say with any certainty, this was you, this was me. Then the star exploded, fragments shot through the universe. We were rent apart, whistling, shrieking, howling from the agony of separation. On one side of the earth, what formed was you, and on the other end, there came to be me. Today, when we meet, it feels like stars recombining, like this was meant to be. There is no you, there is no me, there is only we.
See, that's what I like to love. So, if the audience has any questions or any comments, we'd really love that.
One more poem, please.
You also have to, get the book to read them. But yeah, if you want to, certainly. But if you have, okay.
One more poem? Okay. Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, since we're on the theme of like starlight and stardust, I'll read one more. This poem is called Starlight. You're starlight under my skin, woven into the very fabric of me. From the minute we first met, what could have stopped the oceans from rushing in? These words seem futile, for our bodies writhe in a different tongue. Look, I am learning the language of you, your rounded vowels, your angular consonants. I want to be your constant. Every arch of your back, a heart attack. My heart skips more than a beat. Your skin, its searing heat. There's nowhere else I'd rather be than tucked away in your arms, my face buried in the crook of your neck. Skin upon skin upon skin. You bring me back from the edge of the abyss. What magic is this? This is how I feel you. This is how I learn you. My body simply remembering your soul, like meeting an old friend, an anamkara across time and across space. Separated by many millennia, fate's been kind enough to lead me back to you.
I'm so glad. So, with this, I think.
Any questions or any comments? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So there's plenty
Congratulations, Neha.
Thank you.
On your first book launch, and we're all very excited to certainly read it. What I would like to ask is how long back or when did you sort of start writing? Because my early memory is just because I know Neha and I know her mother as well. I was reading her on Facebook, she used to write, and I was like, suddenly, few days later, you don't see any post, and you're like asking her, when is the next one? So, yeah. So when did you start writing?
So I actually started writing when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, like practically like all my life. And in those days, I used to write in my journal, and then I evolved into having a blog. And, then writing became sort of my profession. I always say that words over numbers. I started off my career in Goldman Sachs. I hated it. It was the worst.
Investment banker.
Investment banking.
Yes, she was an investment banker.
Me, I hated it. It was, and then I realized that writing is my calling in a way, and so I even designed my career around writing. And I started working at an ad agency and a creative agency. Then I went on to do my master's in marketing. Then I went on to work in marketing as a senior marketing manager, then a product marketing manager. So it's always been kind of the backbone of my expression. It's always been the common thread among all my work. And it's I feel very fortunate, to be able to have the space and time to write. And write for pleasure, because there's writing for work and then there's writing for pleasure. And to your point about Facebook, I think I just migrated onto Instagram. So that's where majority of my content sits now. And then, of course, LinkedIn with my Creator Accelerator work as well. But I think that's the journey that my writing has taken me on. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody else wants to ask a question, yes, we have somebody there.
Congratulations, Neha. Hi everyone, I'm Sonia and I've known this warrior for a long time now. My question to Neha is about the poem A Note to Self. It felt like as though Neha was talking to me, that poem just appealed to me so much. I could just imagine Neha just standing there and literally talking to me, the poem. So I wanted to know the story behind that.
That's so that was one of the poems I wrote in the pandemic, and it was about a sense of self-soothing. I think we were all so afraid and I think terrified, on some level about what was going to happen and how we'd come out of it and what the future would look like. And I think it was really hard to make sense of all of the noise around, and so I started writing as a way to kind of heal through that time and through that journey. And I think you're right, a lot of people have resonated with this particular poem because it feels like a conversation, it feels like a dialogue between me and the reader. And the idea was to portray a picture that everything would be okay. I mean, not to give too much away, obviously, about the poem, but
read it.
But the idea is to say that everything will settle. Things will get better. Things like I'm pretty much an optimist in my, way of life and my thinking, and my philosophy is always the glass is half full. And I wanted to be able to firstly self-soothe and tell myself that everything would be okay, and then I was able to hopefully convey that same message to people who read the poem and who resonated with it, because it did feel like kind of like a dialogue between two people.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello everyone, my name is Yashir. Ma'am, as you mentioned, as you begin this book, in the first poem you bring up is Rumi's.
Yeah.
And the minute you said Rumi, I just remembered one of his quotes. He said that about the butterflies itself, that when you chase the butterflies, you'll always keep chasing. So build a garden, and that's when you attract them. So my question comes to this, title that rather than having chasing the butterflies at Moonrise, did you ever think of having it attracting butterflies at the Moonrise?
That's a good one. That's a really nice one.
This is the garden, actually.
Yeah. So exactly, I think to your point about building that community and that garden that really attracts the right kind of energy. I think I'm a big believer in positive vibes and, like the universe manifesting your heart's desire, right? And I think because you read Rumi, you have a similar outlook as well. And I like the imagery of building a garden that, full of flowers where butterflies and beautiful creatures can come and perch and, live there. And one of the quotes I really like, I subscribe to in my life, in my professional life and my personal life is, when you are successful, don't build a higher wall, but build a longer table. It's about bringing in that sense of community and bringing people along with you. And I think that speaks to, building a garden as well. It's that you will attract the right kind of energy and the right tribe of people, who will be there with you no matter what, because you're exuding and you're kind of vibrating on that frequency. So I love that, and thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I love that, build a table, like, have a bigger table,
Yeah.
grow the table. I actually have a question for you. So you have traveled, you've lived in Mumbai and Bangalore and UK, and so how has that impacted your writing and your thinking process?
100%. I think travel and living in different places at different points in time has informed my writing a lot. It's the conversations that I've had with people in different parts of the world, even among my, within my travels in Europe and in the US. It's a different world out there, but when you travel, you realize that people are all the same. Like we all have the same motivations, we all have the same dreams. People are fundamentally good people, and it's just the politics that kind of separates us and keeps us, disparate. But fundamentally, human beings are good souls, So I think it's experiencing that kindness and that goodness in all the people that I met and interacted with and lived with, when I was abroad. I think that really has informed, to a large extent, my worldview, and then at the end of it, fundamentally my writing as well.
Yeah, and the ability to actually connect with people, right? Even though cultures may seem different, even though geographies are different. So, but at the end, it's still like the same thing in there. The feelings are still the same, and the ability to connect, the ability to actually go beyond what we think of as barriers. I think that's what comes through, which is why people are connected. So, one more, yes.
To that, I wanted to kind of respond to what you said, because I thought that was also interesting as well. It was an interesting question. For me, right, when I'm looking at the book and the title of the book and the title of the poem itself, I feel like when you say chasing butterflies as opposed to what was your attracting butterflies,
Yeah.
I feel like that chasing butterflies captures the beginning part of the journey, right? Because she doesn't just sit there and wait for the butterfly to land on her. So there's a little bit of a yearning, right? Like, I want the butterfly, I want to go and chase it. And like before she gives up and she's okay, whether that's resignation or even acceptance, part of the journey also includes like the desperate desire and the like whether it's literal, like where it's actually chasing butterflies, or the butterfly chase symbolizes happiness. There's still a part of us that's like, no, I want, and like, and I feel like, because like that's you know that there's that sentiment that the journey is more important than the destination. I feel like that captures that beautifully.
Thank you.
Before the question, the comment I wanted to say was, I loved your book. I have to say, I haven't finished all of it because I have this tendency of putting it down. I'm just going to put it down and come back, and I'm very forgetful. But I really think you guys should please get it. I was sitting with Neha and we were sitting in Carbon Park, and I was reading and squealing in delight. It felt like, like when you're sucking on a candy, and you just like don't want it to end. You're just relishing it. Oh, it's just you play with words. It's so beautiful. I really relished it. My question actually was more to do with your writing process itself. Can you tell us a little bit something about that?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for equating my book with a delicious candy. I mean, that's the best marketing line out there. Like, it's delicious like candy.
Yeah.
Like that. That's the way we sell
Delicious
it.
reading.
Delicious reading. Yeah. No, but thank you. Indu is such a close friend, and it's. I remember that day when we were sitting in Cubbon Park together and reading it, and it just felt so surreal. Someone reading my book in front of me, and then pausing after every poem and looking up at me with like this big smile. It was such a heartwarming moment for me. So thank you for that, and thank you for your question as well. I think when it comes to my writing process, I am more of a night writer, like a night bird. I like those quiet hours when things are very peaceful and very calm, and I can sit down and think and write, and then the muse just disappears, and you're like ready and waiting. And I've actually written a poem about that. Let me read that one out, if that's okay.
The muse never comes when you want the muse to come.
Yeah, so the muse has no sense of timing. Constantly at the beck and call of the muse, who seems to have no concept of timing. I waited for her all day yesterday. I cleared my schedule and sat at my desk, hoping she'd show up. She turned up at 2:30 last night and forced me to write until the wee hours of the morning. The result of that work is in front of you now. This arrangement of words they sometimes call a poem. It's literally like that, like you never know when it's going to strike you. And I have in my phone, I have like a little note, like a section where I just make notes to myself. And sometimes I'm just like writing lines, like literally, it's not a poem, it's just a few lines. And then from that, it evolves into a poem or into something broader and bigger. But sometimes it's like an idea, and it is like a butterfly in itself because it flits through your mind, and if you don't catch it at that right moment, it's gone forever. Like you can relate to that as well.
Absolutely. In fact, my husband, before cell phones became so handy, I am from a very ancient time. So my husband actually bought me a recorder so that I could record myself, my thoughts immediately. But yeah, the moment you switch on the recording, it's gone. It's very, very butterfly.
And sometimes you think it, and by the time you go to write it, it's a different sentence.
Yeah.
And you've lost you've lost those exact words. But I mean, our job is literally to just channel whatever it is up there and just try to make it work.
I think any creative process
Yes,
is
it's
similar.
very elusive.
Very elusive.
Very elusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Painting.
Yeah.
It is elusive.
And you're trying to but it's interesting because it's out there.
Yeah.
But even if it's not those words that you capture, whatever you bring down,
Yeah.
finally it gets its own form and it comes out in a more.
For it to be an organic process,
Yes.
the beauty is lies
Absolutely.
there.
Actually, talking of the creative process, why don't you tell us a little bit about the design of the cover?
I have the world's greatest designer, I think. She's just fabulous. She's a friend of a friend, and we had several conversations, about so we did like mood boards and ideas, and we put together images that we thought would capture the essence of it. And I obviously sent her a little bit of my manuscript and, showed her the kind of work that's in the book. And she was just, I think she just, like like it's that creative process, and she just captured all of it. And she was able to, create this illustration. And I think it's the most beautiful thing that I could have ever imagined. I mean, I could have never done anything close to this. She did such justice, and I'm just so grateful because I think it captures that whimsy and that that fleetingness,
Yes.
that quality
Yes.
of fleetingness,
True.
and I'm
There,
just so
but
grateful.
not quite. And you were talking about the writing process. I think she's written it down beautifully here. The last, I'll just read out the last verse or the second verse. All I could really do was sit by and watch as they took form. My job was simply to type them up, write them down, and try to make sense of it all. So that's the writing process.
That is the writing.
Yes, yes, please.
Hi. Firstly, congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
And your name, please?
My name is Umesh.
Hi.
I wasn't aware of the event. I heard the title outside, and that's what brought me here.
Oh, how
because
lovely.
I love
Thank you.
I love butterflies and insects in general. I take photos of them.
Perfect.
So,
Are you an entomologist?
no, my sister is mostly.
Oh,
but
okay. Wow.
So yeah, I think I wanted to ask, like, based on the titles itself, like, which comes first for you, the poem idea or the title? Like, for me, it's mostly like, start with the title and then the poem. First.
Yeah. No, so I think for me it's the reverse. It's the content or the meat of it. And then the title is either derivation of the words itself in the poem, or it's something related to it. But yeah, mine is the reverse. It's always the poem first. Pretty much always. I would say 99% the poem first. And 1% the title later. I think it's I think our copywriting like genes are like that. First you write the body and then you write the heading. Then you give the heading. So that's like ingrained in me somewhere.
Some things don't change no matter what format.
It's always
I usually, I always think of a nice title and then like the words follow. So yeah, I guess it's a very
it's such a like personal
thing. Personal process. Yeah, true.
I have one comment about the book that I would just like to add on to everybody that's already said much about it. Especially when it comes to poetry, right? Like, it's heavy. The tone of what you write with a lot of sorrow or grief. They are very heavy emotions that you're trying to put down on paper so that you can be relieved at the end. But unlike the kind of heaviness that you feel after reading something, I feel like Neha's approach to being an optimist in life, right, shows in the way she writes as well. It's not to say that she hasn't seen the tough parts. It's just that she has the way of putting this sort of filter to say that it can be light as well. And that kind of captures that warrior side, right? Not anybody goes through things saying that they want to be strong. You become strong because you go through it, but how you come out of it is beautiful when she has a book that can sit at a coffee table book as a coffee table book, can be picked up at any point in the day, and is not reserved for certain heavy emotions or certain, stories or narratives. It's perfect to read with coffee in the morning. It's great to read on a train ride. So I, like Indu, I've taken the book but not fully read it because I feel like each piece has its own moment and I don't want to rush through it. I feel like every moment's going to be made better if I add this with that habit of reading or eating or whatever. So I really am cherishing the book and not really wanting to finish it at all.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that. So this book, you can't really pick it up and decide, okay, I'm going to finish reading it. Yeah, it has different emotions. It has different, like the poems are to be savored at different points, and you read one poem and then you think about it. And then you can't rush into another poem. So you let that linger and then you pick it up again and then you read. Yeah. So I'm glad you gave it to me a while ago. Last week, I think second day we talked, right? Today I said, I have the book and I give it to you. I said, I'd be very happy. Yes, please.
I mean, poetry, writing, come with Shobna. Poetry and writing is really something which comes from our innermost being, where we want to connect in a spiritual way. And it satisfies us also in the realm of our creativeness. But at the same time, we can't live in a la-la land always. So how do you handle, what about the finances of that might be asked?
Here's a small piece of advice. If you're thinking of quitting your day job and becoming a writer, don't do it. Do not do it. You will earn no money from the book.
Yeah, verse is not meant to enrich your purse.
I do have a day job, as well, and several day jobs actually. And writing is my passion project in a way. It's like you said, it's that spiritual longing, to kind of express yourself and create something out of nothing. I think that's what drives me and my poetry and my work.
What is amazing is like when you do have a day job, you are at the end of the day just too tired. You don't want to think about anything else. You come, you switch on your TikTok, and just so just to get that, pull that time out, reserve some time for yourself, and actually be able to write the poems or actually be able to work on something you like. I think that itself is a big feat, because most of us, we kind of tend to just give up, like, okay, I'm done with my day of work, nobody bother me. So how do you how do you do that?
To do this, you have to read my Harvard Business Review.
Ah.
No, there's a strategy called time boxing. And
That's the one I haven't.
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
about
not poetry.
it's about creating time, right? It's about carving out time. So I don't know who exactly said this, but it's about you will make time for what's important to you.
True.
You know? And if you're not making time for it, that means it's not a priority. It's not a priority for you. So for me, it is that important for me to be able to carve out space and time to do it and to do it right. And it is a time-consuming process, like writing takes long. It takes writing, and then there's rewriting, and then there's editing, and then there's first draft, second draft, third draft, and then you have to know when to kind of walk away from it and know that this is as good as it's gonna get, and if I go further into it, I'll probably lose my mind. Like I can't do this anymore. So then you put a stop to it and you move on to the next thing. So I think like with everything, you just create space and time to be able to do it.
So with this we come to no, we don't. Yes.
My question is based on what you just said, and I was actually thinking about this. When I was asking about the writing process, when I wasn't sure if I should bring it up, but hey, you just said it. So, when for you as a poet, as a writer, when do you know when to walk away? When do you have that sense of, now it's done?
You want to take a stab at it first? Because I know when, like, I struggle with that point, to be honest. Like, I look at it from so many different angles, and then I'll walk away from it, and I'll come back to it. And I'm never fully like, even when I'm reading some of them now, I'm like, oh, this word is wrong, like I need it to be elsewhere, or I need to have a better word here. But I feel like it's never fully done. But you kind of make your peace with, okay, this
What is done.
Yeah.
I quite have the other strategy. It's interesting. Like, I know when it's done. I just know. Like, after that, I won't change. And then I can't bear to look at it again. Then I need to walk away and then come back and like, okay, fine. I think I've birthed you and grown you up. You're ready to go.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Just to see two different perspectives.
Yes.
And there's no, obviously, like, who's
Right
to say
way
there's
or
no right or
very
wrong.
subjective.
It's very subjective.
So the reason I ask is because I also like to dabble with writing, and I like to do. And for me, doodling is process-based art, and it's really funny. Recently, I was doodling on something, and I thought, okay, I'm done, and I put it aside. And then the next, I was really convinced I was done. The next time I came back, I was like, oh, but a little more.
Yeah.
Always.
Right, and so I know from the past that, like, there are times when I come back to either a piece of writing or a piece of art, and I've said, this is done.
Yeah.
Now I had the sense of closure. I can put it away, but it is a subjective feeling, right? Like, both of you have two different answers. So I was very curious, for you, what does it look like? I'm done now.
Yeah, I'm never done. Tomorrow I can reread this entire book. I'll be like, yeah, okay, there's more to like tweak. And I guess it's also like I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I have to stop myself from going overboard, like, because there is a point where you have to leave it be. And you just send it out into the world. Like,
yes.
I guess it's like
a child. You have to send it out into the world.
Now you're on your own. Like, I've done everything I can. I fed and nurtured you forever, but now.
Yeah, now you're on your own. I think I get that, and after that, I can't, like, I don't want to
Look at it again.
change anything in there again. Yeah. So, I guess with that, we sort of come to a close to or not a close, but the beginning.
Yeah.
The last phase of this evening. And Neha, I think you would like to say something.
Absolutely. So I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone who's here today, and everyone who couldn't be here today as well. But it's such a privilege and it's such an honor for me to be able to share my work with you all tonight, and for you to take time and, like my mom said, brave the traffic and come all the way on a Saturday evening. And I just want to say, I hope that if you haven't read the book, what you've heard today has compelled you to maybe think about giving it a go and giving it a read. And for those who have read the book, I just want to say thank you, because I know there are millions of books out there vying for your attention, but for you to have picked my book is my honor and my privilege, and I just want to say thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neha. And so, what I generally like to say on a lighter note is, poetry is cheaper than flowers and lasts longer. It lasts forever. So please, go for it. And with this, we come to the end of today's conversation and poetic evening. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. It's you've been a really amazing audience. You've been very participative and it's been really great. So with my parting note, I'd like to let you know that this book here is available for purchase at the counter here at Atagalata, and Prerna there will so give it to you. And this book is also available online on Amazon worldwide, Blossom Book House, Gangaram's, Book Home stores on Book Home bookstores on Church Street, Flipkart, and Barnes and Noble in the USA. So whenever you go to the US, please go to Barnes and Noble and pick a copy from there. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. And this is now your turn to come and get your signed copy from Neha.
Yeah. Thank you everyone.